If you're just getting into motorcycles right now in 2026, would you believe me if I said that statistically you might not be riding in 2029? I know that sounds crazy with how head over heels you are about your stretched Busas and ratted out SV650 project bikes, but it's true. Look around at the riders on the road today. A huge percentage of them have been riding for 2 years or less. The lifelong motorcyclist is way more of an anomaly than you might think. And you might say, well, duh, motorcycles are dangerous. Too many close calls, crashes, or nagging from the wife means people give it up before they've even hit their prime. And while that is part of it, it's far from the whole story. The real reason is rarely some dramatic, life-altering moment. Most people just kind of quit really slowly, year by year, month by month, or even week by week. One less ride each week turns eventually into no riding at all, which is really sad. So let's break down why most riders fall off instead of crashing out, and what you can do to make sure it doesn't happen to you. Because my mission here on the channel is getting more people excited about riding motorcycles, and I want to see lifelong motorcyclists who keep watching Amy Noob. Let's get into it. Most people get into motorcycles because of a feeling. It's far from what most would consider a logical decision. It actually doesn't make any damn sense at all to ride a motorcycle. Somewhere along the journey through life, something clicked in your brain. Something jumped out at you and latched on like a parasite. Maybe you caught MotoGP on TV and saw some of the greats dragging their elbow around Mugello. Or maybe you saw Gixxer Broad doing a crazy crossed up wheelie while lane splitting past your family's minivan, and mom said, "You better not pull any crap like that when you grow up." But the seed was already planted. Even then, you knew it was inevitable. Little did you know, that's not the reality most riders live in. Motorcycles get sold as machines for adrenaline-fueled excitement or freedom. How many marketing campaigns in motorcycling have been all about freedom or adventure? That's the new one nowadays. As if riding a motorcycle is some cheat code to becoming a more interesting version of yourself. A way to live life at 10/10 while every other slug is wasting away in the slow lane. And to be fair, it is like that. Sometimes. Infrequently. Because most of the time, riding looks really different from the Fantasyland stuff. Your office is not at the top of Stelvio Pass. And I mean, if it is, that's pretty sweet. I'm very jealous of you. It's in fact in a commercial park that requires a 45-minute commute on a 4-lane Strode. And it's hot, or it's cold, or raining. And through some bizarre twist of fate, you find yourself jealous of the NPC in the Camry eating a breakfast burrito. Over time, the gap between the illusion and the reality of motorcycle ownership starts to widen to the point of undeniability. And when you're staring at the plain, uninteresting version of riding you actually experience, all of those little inconveniences that didn't bother you at first start to add up. These little friction points are what really deter you from riding. If you know people who are falling out of love with motorcycles, you'll hear the same copes over and over again, and I've heard them dozens, if not hundreds of times. "I can't trust myself on a motorcycle, man," or "too many cagers are texting on their phones, that's way too dangerous to ride," or the classic, "My wife said I need to sell the bike." Listen, there's a reason they sell all those shirts that say "Deb fell off the back." You don't need her, man. Now, all these reasons get offered up as some big dramatic thing that someone's getting out of the game, but I have a sneaking suspicion that more often than not, the real reason is just really boring. Motorcycling's hard, it's inconvenient, it requires effort every single time you ride. You can just jump in a car and go, but bikes require a process. You gotta put on gear, pack your stuff. It can easily be 10 minutes between walking into your garage and actually leaving the driveway. And I'm guilty of this myself too. I've been riding motorcycles for 11 years now, and there are definitely days where I think, why don't I just jump in my truck? This is gonna be way easier. But then I remember how fun a bike is, and I still get the itch. But then, imagine when you finally get on the road, you still gotta deal with weather and traffic. And when you get home, you don't just park it and forget about it. You got a machine that needs constant attention, way more than a car. chain, maintenance, tires, oil, stuff that would be completely inconceivable to the average car owner. You know, that 15-year-old Nissan with the bedazzled steering wheel cover and the faded window sticker that says "My son is my king," blowing burnt coolant out of the tailpipe with bald tires. Can you imagine that person lubing their chain every 500 miles? Exactly. Motorcyclists are built different. We simply have to be. But eventually, it wears on you. It's a lot of responsibility. You're responsible for yourself and your decisions, your safety, and you're responsible for a machine that can't be neglected the way a car can, because guess what? Sometimes if you neglect them, they'll kill you. When you're new to riding, that responsibility feels like part of the fun. It's engaging, it makes you feel involved, but over time, the excitement fades and what's left starts to feel, well, a little tedious, right? You ride less because your tire tread is almost exposing cords and you just don't feel like dealing with it. What, I gotta go take this thing off, take it to cycle gear, swap out the tire. I'll do it next week and next week and next week. You skip rides because you don't feel like gearing up. The little pain points start winning the "should I really take my motorcycle" debate today. And you know it's getting bad when you catch yourself asking, why am I doing any of this? And unfortunately, the answer really isn't great, because even if you can deal with the inconvenience, for a lot of people, it just becomes even harder to justify something else, and that is the cost. Now, motorcycling is not an inexpensive endeavor. I've made tons of videos talking about this, because a lot of people go into it thinking, I'll just buy a cheap used bike, save on gas, and maybe park for free downtown. And sure, if the alternative is an $80,000 SUV, you might save some money. But if the motorcycle is in addition to a car, not a replacement, you're not saving money anywhere. Everything about motorcycle ownership adds up quickly. You have the price of the bike, gear, insurance, right off the jump before you even swing a leg over it for the first time. Then comes maintenance. Depending on what you drive and how often, some cars need an oil change twice a year. Tires and brakes can last 50,000 miles. Motorcycles just don't work like that. Oils, tires, chains, sprockets, random fixes, flashy mods, carbon fiber farkles, it's a constant outward flow of cash. In the beginning, you just don't care. You chalk it up to cost of doing business. You gotta pay to play after all. But over time, those little couple $100 transactions and the hours in the garage start to wear on you. Then life starts stacking on top of it. You get older, more responsibility, maybe a wife, a kid on the way, a mortgage, a bigger car for the family, and suddenly your wallet is getting pulled in 10 different directions. And that is even before we talk about the gravitational pull men have towards other expensive hobbies. Now you have a vintage guitar collection, a mirrorless camera with 8 different lenses, a carbon fiber road bike with matching Lycra, or God forbid, a burgeoning taste for golf or craft beer. Ugh, sorry, those are so gross to me. And here's the problem. Most of these hobbies are not dangerous. Most of them are not inconvenient. They are way easier to justify, and oftentimes they're even social. It can help you climb the ladder, like golf. I can't even say it. I can't say golf. Motorcycles, on the other hand, are expensive and demanding, so eventually a lot of riders stop being able to justify the ROI. And as your life and responsibilities change, something else starts to creep in that didn't used to be in there, because when you got more to lose, you start to fear more as well. If you make motorcycle videos, how many times has the camera been your Achilles heel? Dead batteries, lost footage, missing SD cards. There's always something that snags us up. At least there used to be. Because since partnering with DJI, our system is as painless as ever, and there are hardly any mishaps when shooting out in the field. The DJI Osmo 360 is built for actual riding. You get around 100 minutes of 8K recording on a single charge, and even more if you swap it over into endurance mode. That's 100 minutes of non-stop footage. And if you manage to forget your SD card, this camera has built-in memory, so you're still covered. No stopping mid-ride to swap batteries or digging through your tail bag just on the side of the road. You just hit record and ride. And when you get back, that's when things really come together. You can take that footage and use features like motion blur to give your clips that smooth, high-speed cinematic look, so even your casual rides end up looking like a proper production. The best upgrade is no longer having to worry about the camera or lost time. The Osmo 360 is a real workhorse that you can rely on day in and day out. If you want a one-camera solution that keeps up with you on a busy day of riding and filming, check out the Osmo 360 by clicking the link down below. Thanks to DJI for supporting the show. Now let's get back into it. Now, fear is something that everyone seems to point to when you hear about someone giving up riding, and it's not completely incorrect. Now, while it's not the only reason, it is the most life or death one. Riding puts your physical safety at risk every single time you swing a leg over the bike. Period. That's just a fact. But at the same time, fear is rarely the sole contributor. So when it gets compounded with everything else we already talked about today, the decision to stop riding starts to feel inevitable. And I've actually started to feel that myself too, which kind of sucks. It's rarely the result of some grand catastrophic moment. Most people are not high-siding into orbit or getting pit maneuvered by Georgia State Patrol because they forgot their R7 tops out at 125 miles an hour. That's not how it usually ends. It starts with close calls. Someone merges into your lane without seeing you. You blow through an intersection and barely miss the Hyundai turning left in front of you. The first few times, you brush it off, especially if you're a younger man. Maybe you even feel a little jolt of excitement knowing you're in danger, but you got away with it. But then it happens again and again, and maybe your friend goes down. Maybe someone in your local riding group gets seriously hurt. Maybe you hear about a fatal accident in your city involving a rider you've never even met, and suddenly it starts to feel way more real. So you start managing risk. You avoid riding at night, you skip the group rides, you're definitely not knocking back brewskis with Foghorn and the boys at Stroker's Bar. But then something subtle starts happening. You're not just avoiding risky situations anymore, you're avoiding riding in general. The fear starts working against the excitement, and if you let it go unchecked, it slowly drains the fun out of riding entirely. Even if you manage the fear, you deal with the cost, and you tolerate the inconvenience, the motorcycle industry itself is not doing you any favors to keep people riding. All right, here is the obligatory part of the video where I talk about the economy. Buckle up. In the era of strong middle-class single-income households, upward mobility, and cultural optimism, the motorcycle power progression actually made sense. You start on a smaller bike like a 250, something cheap, then you graduate to a middleweight like a 600, then you land on a flagship. You get a 1000, baby, and you go start ripping wheelies on the frickin' highway. And that's how it used to work, and that is still the game most manufacturers are playing. But the problem is, that path is no longer viable for most people. Most motorcyclists are not buying 3 or 4 brand new bikes over the course of 5 to 7 years. They're trying to make one smart purchase that maximizes value, something they can grow into without worrying about upgrading too soon. That's how you end up with 20-year-olds starting on 600cc super sports or even leader bikes. They are trying to buy the bike, the final bike, the finisher bike, because they cannot afford to think about an upgrade path. And that's how you end up with riders who are either scared, overwhelmed, or injured. If you look at the data, a huge percentage of single vehicle motorcycle accidents involve young men on sport bikes with limited training. But I want to sympathize with that demographic for a second rather than just, talking down to them. The upgrade path they are being sold is just not realistic. Now look, sure, the market's filled with cheap, approachable, sub 500cc beginner bikes, but most people know they're gonna get bored of those pretty quickly. Meanwhile, the middleweight category is getting pushed further and further out of reach. Even something like an MT-07 now is like $10,000 out the door at a dealership. And for what? 75 horsepower? And anything more interesting, more powerful, or more exotic in that middleweight space starts creeping into price territory that used to belong to flagship motorcycles a decade ago. Seriously, have you seen the price of middleweights? They are like what leader bikes used to cost. Then on the far end, manufacturers are catering to affluent buyers who will happily spend $20,000 to $30,000 on a superbike or a fully loaded ADV spaceship just because they can. So what happens is pretty predictable. People either buy something small, get bored, and cannot justify the cost to move up, or they buy something too big and end up overwhelmed or hurt. Neither one of these is a recipe for long-term riders. And beyond the bikes themselves, in the US, there's no real structure around becoming a better rider. There's no clear path towards development or mastery. Most people take the MSF course and then just kind of figure it out from there. There's no clearly defined pathways for improvement. You have to actively analyze and seek out your own track days, advanced rider courses that are often limited in availability and location. But meanwhile, we live in a world where everything else is gamified. You have fitness apps that track your progress and push you to improve. Your Starbucks app logs your purchases and gives you rewards. There are even systems trying to gamify your utilities, praising or criticizing your energy usage to influence your behavior. Don't even get me started on the insurance apps that try to track your driving to make sure that you're being a good boy. Ask me if I ever sign up for those. I don't care how big the discount is, you ain't tracking me. Now, whether that is good or bad is a bigger conversation, but the point is, it works. The human brain responds to systems that track progress and reward consistency. Motorcycling does not have that. You're just left floating in the void. Your skills plateau, you stop improving, and eventually you start questioning what the point of all of it is. And when you're no longer improving and all the other factors we've talked about are stacked against you, it becomes really easy to walk away. So, if all of this is working against riders, how do you actually stick with it? Let's think about what separates those who stick with riding from those who fall off. You've probably come across a few before. The guy who has been riding for 20 years yet chooses to daily a Suzuki DR200 Dual Sport with a milk crate held on with bungee cords. They stop chasing the fantasy of what motorcycling is meant to be, compared to just what it actually is. They prioritize simplicity and ease of use. They ride bikes that are cheap to maintain for years and years and years on end. And I will hear about them in the comment section of my videos for years and years and years on end. And guess what? It's Suzuki people. I don't know why it's always Suzuki people. They integrate their motorcycles into their daily life. There's not an identity or a lifestyle, but it's just a fixture of their world. 99% of car drivers are not enthusiasts. They use a car daily, but they know little of how it works or what makes it special or interesting. Now, here's a funny story. The other day I was sitting with my wife in her car and I asked her to point out where the tachometer is in her gauge cluster. She literally did not know what the hell I was talking about. So, yeah, most people don't know anything. Sorry, honey. It's just a tool. Motorcycles can be that way too. In fact, in most parts of the world, motorcycles are tools. They're not luxurious lifestyle products aimed at a fleeting moment in a person's life, trying to capture their midlife crisis. If you approach motorcycling from a place of practicality, it's easier to justify a motorcycle's place in your life. If you can understand how a bike serves you or provides value, whether it be for utility or recreation, ownership becomes worthwhile, as opposed to seeing your bike as some sort of identity crisis prop meant to flex or impress. Lifelong riders also continue to improve. They've programmed their brain to notice and appreciate the incremental improvements that take place every time they ride. I'm not saying every rider needs to go to a track day or off-road ADV courses, but I think every person on earth can benefit from seeing the positive changes that take place as they become a better version of themselves in any capacity. Motorcycling can be a catalyst for that experience for many people. It can be an element of greater path towards self-improvement, because when you approach motorcycling from this holistic angle, it will survive changes in your life. New relationships, kids, a new job, a new city. That's how you end up riding for 10, 20, 30, or even 40 years. Not because you memorize the spec sheets of every superbike of the last decade, or because you have the most expensive climb or AGV gear, but because you made motorcycling align naturally with your life and your values. You can't just be chasing the highest highs. You have to make it sustainable in every capacity. There's a reason people say slow and steady wins the race. Incremental improvements, Kaizen, all these things are basically the same. Most riders don't quit because they crashed or because their wife said so. They quit because they never learned how to actually make riding fit their life. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of today's video. I'll see you in the next one. Fact: identical twins are the only humans who don't have a unique individual scent. Goodbye.